There's been a lot of studies in America, serious studies that show that the last round of tariffs were paid by Americans. And that was a fact. And that increased the prices. That's going to add to inflationary pressure. But still, leaving those studies aside, and there's a really broad consensus among the economists that's been the case, we're going to see this because of a political issue. I think about Chinese roads, German cars, Japanese cars, American cars, the predominantly foreign cars running on the streets of China. And China can now do EVs. It can't do its own combustion engine vehicles, but it can do pretty good EVs, pretty cheap, pretty high quality. But they're going to meet with a lot of resistance if they try to go into Europe. And certainly, I highly doubt they will be able to come here. So then I think about, okay, what happens if Chinese start to say, well, if you're going to slap on tariffs on EVs, shouldn't we slap on even more tariffs on the German cars and American cars? And I think we're not heading in the right direction. It's a lot of protectionism under the guise of national security, but this is, not the good direction that we should all head. So it's going to raise some retaliatory efforts, but the Chinese thinking is, look, we're expecting this anyways. It doesn't matter if it's Trump, it doesn't matter if it's Biden. It's kind of all just going to be like that. So they're just going to have to keep going it. Maybe they'll work with more global partners. And by the way, in the data, what do we see about trade? Yes, there's less direct trade between China and the US, but they're all going through Mexico and Vietnam. It's just taking longer and it's more expensive. And Chinese money. Guess who's funding the factories in Vietnam? Chinese capital. Chinese investment in Mexico has risen 8 times. It's just taking a longer route. Why? Because ultimately, the ultimate supply and demand are still coming from the 2 largest countries, largest economies in the world. And even if they try to, kind of break up in direct terms, they're still deeply embedded indirectly through these links through other countries.
China is winning. We are losing. Started by Mr. Trump, raised by Mr. Biden. The tariff on the Chinese electric vehicles is 100%. So let me explain quickly what that means. The Chinese produce this wonderful thing, this electric vehicle, and let's take a simple number. $30,000 is what they cost for the car. You're an American. You need, therefore, to come up with $30,000 if, for example, you're a company that uses electric trucks to do part of your business. It's an input. You'd have to come up with $30,000 to get the truck. And then you'd have to pay 100%. Another $30,000 will going to Uncle Sam, who put the tariff. Tariff is just a word for a tax. It's a word for a tax on an imported good or a service, something that produced out of the country but brought in here for sale. That's what an import is, and tariff is the name of the tax you put on imports. We have been putting taxes on imports as a nation from the beginning, although throughout the history of the country, nothing new about it. But it's 100%, which means an American would have to buy that truck by giving China 30 grand for the truck and Uncle Sam another 30 grand. And so with 60 grand, you get the truck. But of course, no one does that. Why? Because Ford and General Motors and Tesla will sell you an electric car or truck for a mere 40 grand or 50 grand or something like that. So who's helped by this? Ford and General Motors, they wouldn't be able to sell their crappy cars otherwise. None of us buy a $40,000 or $50,000 electric car if we're going to do that and give BYD $30,000 for a better car rather than $40,000 or $50,000 to General Motors, however patriotic we might feel. And you know who knows it? Ford and General Motors. So they went to the president and they said, put that tariff there. It'll protect us. Of course, they didn't say our profits, which is the truth. It'll protect jobs. Whenever you hear a capitalist tell you about what they're doing to protect jobs, hold on to your wallet. Someone's reaching. Why is it false? Because this is a terrible act for most American producers. Think of yourself as a maker of shirts or of chairs or of software programs. You would like to buy the trucks you need to bring in your inputs, to sell and distribute your outputs. You're going to have to buy electric trucks. You'd like to buy the best one at the lowest price. Of course, you're competing with enterprises in France and in Germany and in Brazil and in Nigeria and fill in the blank. They're all buying BYD cars at 30 grand. You have to pay 40 or 50 to General Motors. You know what that means? They're going to defeat you economically. You're going to be loser. And when you lose, you're going to lay off your workers because you can't compete with the companies that can buy the biggest, the best, and the cheapest electric vehicle. Now multiply this by dozens of other commodities. China is winning. We are losing. Shh. Don't tell anyone.